Yeah.
Excellencies, honorable ministers, my dear Sister Pumzile of UN Women, colleagues, and dear friends. We gather in solidarity as partners and co-leaders of the Action Coalition on Bodily Autonomy and Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights, committed to transformational action to make life better for women and girls. Women's rights and choices, and a woman's autonomy and self-determination over her body must be respected and upheld. Yet everywhere, women, and in particular adolescent girls, are still made to carry the heavy burden of persistent gender inequality with all its detrimental consequences, sexual and gender-based violence, femicide, and for millions each year, the threat of harmful practices such as forced and early marriages or female genital mutilation, FGM. Shrivanati, should I turn to you now? Very
Yes.
good. My order of speakers was out of order. I apologize.
No.
Over to you, please. Thank you.
No worries. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues and friends. I'm Sivanandi Thanendran, Executive Director of the Asian Pacific Resource and Research Center for Women, ARROW, based in Malaysia, and your moderator for today. I welcome you to our high-level event as part of the Generation Equality Forum entitled Partnership in Solidarity, the Action Coalition on Bodily Autonomy and Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights. Before we get started, I would just like to remind everyone that French and Spanish interpretation is available for this event, as well as international sign language. On the bottom of your screen, you will be able to see a globe icon. Please click there and select the language you wish to listen to. This event is also being live streamed on the UNFPA's YouTube channel in English. We welcome your comments in the chat box. We will kindly ask that if you are not speaking, to please mute your audio and close your video so that the sign language interpreter has adequate space on the screen. After we hear from the executive directors of UNFPA and UN Women, we will launch into a conversation with each of the speakers who represent the co-leading government or organization of the Action Coalition on Bodily Autonomy and SRHR. The Generation Equality Forum was conceived in honor of the Beijing Platform for Action's 25th anniversary and is a civil society-centered global initiative on gender equality convened by UN Women and co-hosted by the governments of Mexico and France. As part of this, 6 action coalitions have been developed, including the Action Coalition on Bodily Autonomy and SRHR, as innovative multi-stakeholder partnerships that will mobilize governments, civil society, international organizations, and the private sector to catalyze collective action and deliver concrete, game-changing results across generations for girls and women. Our objectives today are to demonstrate the new and strengthened network of member states, multilateral organizations, civil society organizations, the United Nations, and private strategic partners that have committed to generating new solutions and working together on key areas of SRHR that need acceleration. We are here to amplify the gender equality and SRHR are inextricably linked and interdependent, and how much these issues have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. As the Executive Director of ARROW, which is one of the co-leaders of this Action Coalition, I would like to say how exciting it is to be part of this group of partners in solidarity, working towards accelerating progress on SRHR, human rights, and gender equality. The women's and feminist movements were an integral part of influencing the formulation of the Cairo and the Beijing outcomes. ARROW has been part of that history, and we are proud that we continue to champion sexual and reproductive rights till today and are part of this leadership structure of the Action Coalition on Bodily Autonomy and SRHR. We hope that as a partnership, we are able to continue to advance the much needed action on women and girls being able to have full autonomy over their bodies, free decision making on matters related to reproduction and sexuality, and from there being able to realize their full potential. We cannot have autonomy over our lives without having autonomy over our bodies. Arrow fully commits to making the Action Coalition a success in the coming years. As we have many speakers today, and in the interest of time, I would like to welcome Natalia Kanem, United Nations Under Secretary General and the esteemed Executive Director of UNFPA, who is very excited to give introductory remarks. Natalia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed, Sivananthi. Excellencies, honorable ministers, my dear Sister Phumzile of UN Women, colleagues, dear friends. We gather in solidarity as partners and co-leaders of the Action Coalition on Body Autonomy and Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights, committed to transformative action to make life better for women and girls. Women's rights and choices and a woman's autonomy and self-determination over her body must be respected and upheld. Yet everywhere, women, and in particular, adolescent girls, are still made to carry the heavy burden of persistent gender inequality with all its detrimental consequences: sexual and gender-based violence, femicide, and for millions each year, the threat of harmful practices such as forced and early marriages or female genital mutilation, FGM. When a woman is unable to make her own decisions about contraception and sexual relations, and only about 55% of women say that they can, she's robbed of her bodily autonomy. When a girl is subjected to female genital mutilation, and at least 200 million women and girls alive today have been, her bodily integrity is violated. When an adolescent girl becomes a bride, as 33,000 will today, her bodily autonomy has been taken from her. And shockingly, rape continues to be used as a weapon of war, a crime that is too often met with impunity. So we come together to say enough. In this decade of action on the Sustainable Development Goals, how well we uphold the rights and choices of women and girls will spell the difference between failure or success. As co-lead of this Action Coalition on Bodily Autonomy and Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights, UNFPA is energized. We are broadcasting our powerful message that full gender equality depends upon every woman and girl being able to take decisions and exercise autonomy over her own body, and that there will be no gender justice without access to sexual and reproductive health services, to comprehensive sexuality education to protect young people, and to reproductive rights. The ICPD and the Beijing agendas of action go hand in hand. Promises made must be promises kept. So strategically speaking, what can we do? UNFPA has set out 3 transformational actions, 3 zeros, to achieve by 2030. 0 unmet need for family planning, 0 preventable maternal deaths, and 0 violence and harmful practices against women and girls. And in this, I would include violations of bodily integrity, such as FGM, rape, child marriage. All of this has been based upon data and evidence. And for this Action Coalition to succeed, solid data and partnerships are essential. We saw the force for good that partnership and solidarity can be just a year ago at the historic Nairobi Summit on ICPD 25, and we have the wind in our sails from Nairobi. Let's use that momentum and energy and the remarkable 1,250 plus commitments that emerged from Nairobi to make generation equality a reality. So let us please stay alert. We have our work cut out for us. As Sivananthi alluded to, 2020 has been a year like no other with COVID-19, and that continues to expose and to deepen the devastating inequalities in our societies, including gender inequalities, as we see gender-based violence has skyrocketed everywhere. A shadow pandemic, no community untouched. Yet what I'm heartened to see is that Even amid the pandemic and the tremendous challenges it has wrought, governments and advocates were continuing to rally behind sexual and reproductive health and rights. And this is a time to stand firm on our commitments, to forge ahead, to back up words with deeds, with action on the ground. As a coalition, we've already begun to do that. And I'm looking forward to pick up that momentum in Mexico and in Paris next year, because the rights of women and girls are non-negotiable. UNFPA will continue to defend them through any adversity, because women's rights are human rights. Reproductive rights are human rights, and our march forward continues. We will not turn back. Rights and choices for all, nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalia, for your very inspiring and rousing words and introduction. And now I welcome Phumzile Mlambo Nguha, United Nations Under-Secretary General and Executive Director of UN Women. Phumzile, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me? Okay. Excellencies, dear ministers, dear ambassadors, dear civil society sisters and partners, young people, ladies and gentlemen. Just over a year ago in Nairobi, during the celebration of ICPD plus 25, UN Women committed to continuing to work with UN family, member states, civil society, and private sector to ensure that we repeal discriminatory legislation and that we transform discriminatory norms, gender stereotypes, attitudes, and practices in order to empower all women, including adolescent girls, so that they can exercise their rights and seek sexual and reproductive health services, and make sure that they fight for their rights to be respected. I couldn't have waited any longer for this day where we take another step in making this a reality. We have been working since 2019, especially with UNFPA, to ensure that we promote gender-responsive sexual, reproductive, maternal, newborn, child, and adolescent health interventions. In 49 countries, we are active in transforming HIV responses to be gender sensitive. And in Nairobi, also committed to support a platform that will ensure that youth participate actively in the Beijing plus 25 activities. And I'm glad to say all of this is work in progress, and it is progressing very well despite all the challenges posed by the pandemic. We have pledged to empower communities, especially women and girls, as agents of change and as leaders who can generate solidarity and guide all of us about the changes that are needed in our society. Generation Equality's a coalition on bodily autonomy and SRHR is an important content in making generation equality relevant to our young people. The Generation Equality Forum and its Action Coalition are central in advancing the commitments that we have made. We have the 6 Action Coalition, which are mutually reinforcing. Having Action Coalition on bodily autonomy and sexual reproductive health and rights is a chance to tackle a core issue for human rights and gender equality. I always say that the invention of the birth control pill is probably one of the most revolutionary things that has happened for women and for the women's movement. I cannot imagine where we would be if we did not have that possibility. Many women's possibility to work, to pursue many interests that are critical for their lives would not have been possible. I am looking forward to making sure that this Action Coalition lifts the work that we are doing in that area, builds on the work that UNFPA, civil society, governments are doing in this area. The lockdown that came with the fight against the pandemic has meant that we've lost time. We have some of our gains being reversed, and we don't only have to advance our gains, we also have to protect and make sure that the gains that we've made are not further eroded. So I look forward to make sure that the ICPD and the Beijing platform work together as they always have been. And it is such a pleasure to have Natalia in the hot seat, leading us in this area, to have the member states, to have civil society, and especially to have young women and girls participating in this forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you both, Phumzile and Natalia, for starting off our conversation. And I must add that, you know, this concept of shared leadership is very much part of a feminist ideal. And it is great that these action coalitions are having this concept of shared leadership. So we will now play a short video which highlights how critical sexual and reproductive health is to gender equality and women's empowerment.
It's not easy managing studies, home issues, business. It's all about determination. I don't like depending on men. Going out to the bank, it's really too hard to get cash. So it's better to have a mobile money. At the moment, I have just one branch, and I wish to have many branches. Have to continue moving forward. Without family planning, there's no way I can manage it. I decided to go somewhere whereby I can get counseling. And I've chosen to implant for 3 years just to help with effective running of my business. Be determined, you'll get everything you want.
We will now start our next segment on member states' commitment to gender equality and SRHR, and specifically this action coalition. I would like to introduce Her Excellency Elizabeth Gomez Alcorta, Minister of Women, Gender and Diversity in Argentina. This question is directed to you. There is a rich history of women's movement in Argentina. Can you tell us why this action coalition was important to be part of for Argentina, and what you hope to bring to it?
Bueno, buenos días a todos y todas. Gracias por los que hicieron posible la organización de este encuentro tan importante. Efectivamente, nuestro país, Argentina, tiene una larga trayectoria y continuidad de luchas, con un movimiento de derechos humanos muy potente y un movimiento de mujeres y de la diversidad también. La historia de las madres de Plaza de Mayo, de las abuelas de Plaza de Mayo, más de 35 encuentros nacionales, plurinacionales de mujeres construidos autogestivamente, 15 años de la campaña nacional por el derecho al aborto legal, seguro y gratuito, el Ni Una Menos, la Marea Verde son muestra de ese movimiento tan fuerte que tiene Argentina. Hoy el contexto local es muy promisorio. Una de las primeras decisiones de la actual gestión de gobierno, que comenzó el 10 de diciembre del año pasado, fue jerarquizar la agenda de género y de diversidad y posicionarla en un lugar preponderante, creando el primer Ministerio de las Mujeres, Géneros y Diversidad, al cual tengo el honor de representar. El compromiso con la agenda de los derechos sexuales y reproductivos también es indudable. No es un dato menor que la primera resolución del Ministerio de Salud de la Nación, de este gobierno nacional, fue aprobar un protocolo para la atención integral de las personas con derecho a la interrupción legal del embarazo, que era un reclamo de larga data y que de hecho los organismos de derechos humanos en nuestro país venían sosteniendo esa demanda. En esta línea, con mucho orgullo, comparto la noticia de que el presidente de la Nación presentó esta misma semana, el día martes, tal como lo había prometido, un proyecto de ley para legalizar la interrupción voluntaria del embarazo, un proyecto elaborado que recoge la lucha del movimiento de mujeres en nuestro país y sobre todo reconoce el aporte fundamental de la campaña nacional por el derecho al aborto legal, seguro y gratuito. En el aniversario 25 de Beijing, Argentina tiene por primera vez un ministerio de las mujeres, géneros y diversidad. 25 años después somos conscientes de que la plataforma sigue vigente y que los desafíos que ahí se plasmaron no solamente se actualizan, sino se complejizan cada vez más. Estamos convencidas de que es preciso retomar Beijing desde un feminismo crítico. Esto implica sofisticar esa agenda de esa conferencia, incluyendo y precisando temas como el acceso al aborto legal, seguro y gratuito, a la vez que impulsando el reconocimiento de los derechos de otros grupos históricamente marginalizados, centralmente como el colectivo LGBTQ+. Sabemos que las disputas por los sentidos se dan en la arena internacional, que constituye un punto clave para la lucha por la emancipación de los géneros históricamente subyugados. Es que las condiciones materiales, pero también las simbólicas que generan y perpetúan las desigualdades entre los géneros, sabemos y somos conscientes que exceden todas las fronteras. La desigualdad es universal, de ahí que también la vocación feminista tenga que ser global. Por eso, desde nuestro ministerio apostamos a un trabajo internacional con una impronta feminista. Sabemos que estamos en un contexto difícil, en donde los sectores conservadores, reticentes al reconocimiento y al avance de los derechos de las mujeres, tienen fuerte presencia. Esto nos exige apostar al multilateralismo con propuestas novedosas, como es el Foro Generación Igualdad, que reúne gobiernos comprometidos con la agenda de género, organizaciones internacionales y de la sociedad civil, para impulsar colectivamente acciones concretas de cara a revertir estos patrones estructurales que persisten entre los géneros en temas nodales, como sin lugar a dudas es el ejercicio de los derechos sexuales y reproductivos, los sistemas de cuidados y también las violencias por razones de género. Para terminar, este desafío también nos obliga a crear y a fortalecer alianzas entre liderazgos feministas y gobiernos progresistas para que actuemos coordinados para promover la generación de compromisos y también de estándares, así como crear nuevos ámbitos de integración y cooperación potentes para construir sociedades más justas e igualitarias. Les agradezco nuevamente a los que hicieron posible que hoy, a pesar de la pandemia, podamos estar encontrándonos y seguir construyendo colectivamente.
Thank you so much, Minister Gomez Alcorta. I now turn to Trina Rust-Tusen, State Secretary for Development Policy, Denmark. The question I have for you is that last year, Denmark, along with Kenya and UNFPA, co-hosted the Nairobi summit that marked the 25th anniversary of the ICPD program of action. How can we build on the success of the Nairobi summit to benefit the Action Coalition?
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, Excellencies, colleagues and friends. We have important work to do here. The SRHR Coalition, Action Coalition, comes at an absolute crucial hour, and I'm very pleased and very proud to be here with this committed leadership from all around the world. Together we can create a world where women and girls choose and plan their life and their future, where their rights are not compromised, where crisis strikes or conservative forces put back. In Nairobi, we did celebrate 25 years of women and girls' right to decide over their own body. More than 1,250 ambitious promises were made. We should have been well underway to deliver on those promises. We should have been celebrating the Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action 25 years after its adoption. Instead, we face a new and alarming challenge in COVID-19 with severe consequences for women and girls. Instant action is needed, and women and girls must be front and center where we develop recovery strategies based on the COVID-19 crisis. We also witness unacceptable pushback against women's and girls' rights. If we do not push back, years of progress may be lost. We cannot let this happen. Fortunately, the promises from Nairobi are solid foundations for addressing the double pressure on women's and girls' rights at the moment, caused by both the pandemic and as well as the conservative forces. Let's stand on the shoulders of the Nairobi momentum and build our work on the commitments that were already made. Give young people to act, and here are a few of the examples that we especially work hard to achieve. So give young people access to comprehensive sexual education. Youth must be able to make informed choices about their lives, bodies, and sexuality. Make contraception available to all women and girls. They must be in charge of it when, with whom, and how many children they want. Make safe abortion available. Make sure that men and boys are on board as well. We simply will not reach our goals if we are not all on the same page. I'm happy we're here today join forces once again, and it's really a pleasure to listening to all of the inputs from all around the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your reply, Trina. I now welcome Her Excellency Elizabeth Moreno, Minister of Gender Equality, Diversity and Equal Opportunities, France, with my next question. The government of France, along with the government of Mexico, has shown leadership in the establishment of the Generation Equality Forum. Could you elaborate on why France chose to take on a leading role for generation equality overall, as well as for the Action Coalition on Bodily Autonomy and SRHR, and what the priorities are?
Thank you very much for your question, Sivananti. Et bonjour à toutes et à tous. Je suis vraiment très heureuse de participer à cette rencontre virtuelle sur un sujet qui est tellement important encore de nos jours. Comme vous le savez, le président de la République, Emmanuel Macron, a érigé l'égalité entre les femmes et les hommes en grande cause de son mandat, et il a également décidé d'en faire un marqueur très fort de la politique étrangère de la France qui conduit depuis 2018 une diplomatie féministe. C'est pourquoi il a souhaité que se tienne en France le Forum Génération Égalité qui marquera une avancée déterminante pour les droits des filles et des femmes et pour accélérer les objectifs de l'agenda 2030 pour une société plus juste. Les droits et la santé sexuelle et reproductive sont au cœur de cet enjeu. La reconnaissance pleine et entière des DSSR est une condition essentielle pour mettre fin aux inégalités. C'est pour cela que le président Macron a souhaité que la France devienne championne de cette coalition pour porter des ambitions hautes afin que chaque fille et chaque femme puisse être libre de disposer de son corps comme elle l'entend et décider de son avenir. Et nous sommes très heureux de porter cette priorité avec nos partenaires argentins, burkinabés et danois. Les DSSR sont un enjeu de santé. Il est primordial de renforcer les services de santé sexuelle et reproductive, notamment en assurant que chaque femme puisse obtenir des informations précises sur la contraception et garantir la disponibilité des produits contraceptifs. Nous souhaitons ainsi que la coalition contribue à parvenir à une universalisation de la couverture en matière de contraceptifs et de développer des produits et des services plus adaptés aux besoins des femmes. Les DSSR sont aussi, et plus encore, un enjeu en termes de droit. Droit de prendre librement et de façon éclairée toutes les décisions importantes qui concernent son propre corps, droit de choisir quand avoir un enfant ou ne pas avoir d'enfant également. Nous souhaitons ainsi œuvrer dans la coalition pour faire progresser un accès sûr, légal, et médicalisé à l'avortement dans le monde en encourageant l'adoption de nouvelles mesures et en développant des programmes sur le terrain défendant le droit des femmes à disposer librement de leur corps. C'est enfin un sujet de société, de changement de normes et de comportements sociaux, notamment pour ceux qui relèvent des relations entre les femmes et les hommes. L'éducation complète à la sexualité est un outil précieux qui permet de parler de consentement, de sexualité, des rapports humains et de faire diminuer toutes les violences basées sur le genre, y compris les pratiques néfastes comme les mutilations sexuelles féminines et les mariages précoces. L'éducation complète à la sexualité permet enfin de donner la parole aux jeunes qui doivent être au centre de nos actions et en être eux et elles-mêmes actrices et acteurs. Il faut donner une priorité aux jeunes et aux adolescents parce que cette future génération est celle qui pilotera notre monde. Enfin, pour que cette coalition et le forum puissent être à la hauteur des enjeux, nous devons intégrer pleinement la crise de la Covid-19 et ses conséquences dans nos réflexions. Les précédentes épidémies ont montré les conséquences très lourdes sur les filles et les femmes lorsque leurs besoins en santé sexuelle et reproductive ne sont pas remplis et l'exacerbation des inégalités auxquelles elles peuvent conduire. La coalition doit donc permettre que les avancées des dernières années en matière de DSSR ne souffrent pas d'un retour en arrière et au contraire qu'elles progressent réellement. Le Forum Génération Égalité doit être pour toutes et pour tous le rendez-vous pour créer un monde de demain et donner à la jeune génération et à celles qui suivront les outils pour une société plus égalitaire et beaucoup plus juste. C'est ce qui fera le succès du Forum et c'est la raison pour laquelle nous avons souhaité l'accueillir en France au mois de juin prochain et je me réjouis d'ici là de travailler avec vous sur ce sujet. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Minister Moreno, for your commitment.
Gracias,
and
Ministra Moreno,
leadership.
por su compromiso. Y
I'm now pleased to welcome
ahora
Elena
presento
Grozdanova,
Elena
State Advisor
Grozdanova,
for Equal Opportunities of North Macedonia. Elena,
Macedonia.
we all know
Elena,
that political commitment
sabemos.
is crucial to safeguard the rights and health of women and girls. What kind of future do you imagine for adolescent girls, and how will North Macedonia support that?
Madam, it's okay now? Yes, okay. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation to share some information about the topics concerning your question for North Macedonia. And I would like to say that our common responsibilities is to create the conditions for all women and girls in achieving equality living. Gender equality is a common obligation and priority of the government of Republic of North Macedonia. It means that gender equality is a part also of the governmental work program 2020-2024 and is also obligation on the agenda for sustainable development until 2030 at both national and local level. We see women and girls equal with men in society, in decisive positions, economically independent and free from the framework of the control and violence, with the supportive health care system and their sexual and reproductive health and rights guaranteed. North Macedonia will support these legislation changes, strategic and policy measures in budget for better living standard for all, including women and girls. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elena, for these reflections. Before we move to the next segment, I would also like to acknowledge that Burkina Faso is also one of the member state co-leaders in this action coalition, but unfortunately could not be represented here with us today. We understand they are having elections this week and wish them well. So to kick off our next segment, we will play a short video clip from 1 year ago at the Nairobi Summit convened to commemorate the International Conference on Population and Development's 25th year anniversary.
This Sustainable Development Goals cannot and will not be achieved until women, girls, and young people are able to control their bodies and their lives free from fear and from violence. We keep moving forward. We will not retreat. We will never give up. We are in a race to the finish line, and we shall prevail. Thank you. Nashukuru sana.
Our next segment will focus on a dialogue with strategic partners and civil society. To start off this dialogue, I welcome Alvaro Bermejo, Director General of International Planned Parenthood Federation, IPPF, based in the United Kingdom. Alvaro, the COVID-19 pandemic has led to serious setbacks for development efforts worldwide. What are some of the opportunities with regards to SRHR and building back better after COVID-19?
Thank you, Siva, and thanks to everybody that have contributed to making this possible. As a global provider and as a leading advocate for sexual and reproductive rights, IPPF has fought from the very start of the pandemic, not only to ensure continued access to services for all, but also to protect, promote, and even try to advance sexual and reproductive rights through advocacy. A survey that we conducted in late March 2020 found that 66%, 2/3 of IPPF service providers were forced to close their services, their delivery points, because of the pandemic and the lockdown. The deprioritization of sexual and reproductive health services, including abortion care, the overwhelmed health systems, the restrictions on movement, and the fear of visiting health facilities all contributed to challenging access. On the advocacy front, IPPF moved very quickly. First, in situations where restrictions were placed on non-essential health services,
Los servicios de salud.
we mobilized to ensure sexual and reproductive health services, including abortions, were officially recognized as essential by the government and thus allowed to continue operating. Results were generally positive, which I think bodes well for future opportunities to include SRHR in universal health coverage. Second, we pushed to ensure that opportunities to reduce policy barriers to SRHR were acted on. Many countries have eased policy restrictions that got in the way of pioneering approaches of telemedicine and telecounseling, of home-based care for abortion. For example, France, represented here by the minister, Germany, India, and Nepal all authorized it. And we have seen a flourish of digital offerings for comprehensive sexuality education. While these approaches were in some cases introduced as temporary measures, they really have offered the opportunity to pilot, to test out, and potentially to retain solutions that can be used in the longer term. Finally, we have lobbied to ensure gender and human rights-based approaches to tackling the pandemic. We have heard from Natalia and other preceding speakers about the near universal increase in SGBV that happened as countries went into lockdown. It has forced governments and service providers to address the issues, providing more targeted services, and in some cases, like in my native Spain, introducing new laws to protect those living with abusers. We need to continue documenting these initiatives, learning and taking the opportunity to call for their permanent rollout. These innovations are enabling women, girls, and young people in all their diversity to decide what model of care best suits their needs and situation, whether it's fully supported through in-clinic services or entirely or partially self-managed with support from a healthcare worker. These innovations provide an opportunity to provide more choice and to be more inclusive, ensuring we can reach out to the most vulnerable and leave no one behind. Beyond these reflections, which are specific for SRHR, of course, the coronavirus pandemic is also an opportunity to rethink the global health architecture, focusing on multi-sector and system-based approaches and ensuring community and civil society engagement. COVID-19 has put a spotlight on the brutality of inequity and exclusion. As hinted by our colleague from Argentina, gracias, Ministra, we can take a more feminist approach to COVID-19 recovery in a way that integrates and recognizes the value of care, the rights and autonomy of women over their body and their sexual and reproductive lives. Thank you, Siva.
Thank you so much, Alvaro. I now turn to Monique Vleder, Head of Secretariat, Global Financing Facility for Women, Children and Adolescents, hosted at the World Bank in the United States. Monique, the COVID-19 crisis could reverse decades of progress in many countries. How do we ensure that much needed funds will be available to respond to COVID-19, especially for adolescent girls, young women, and women, once this pandemic is under better control?
Okay, can you hear me now? Great, thank you. And we are so excited to be part of the Generation Equality Forum and also to be the co-leader for the Bodily, Autonomy and SRHR Action Coalition. And so when we look up to the end of 2019, so much progress has been made, and we were so excited to see in our partner countries the important progress that countries were making on this important agenda, and obviously very saddened by the impact of the COVID pandemic, particularly on that what we call the secondary crisis and the impact on the access, the negative impact and the disruptions in the access of services for women and children and adolescents. And when we look at our 36 GFF partner countries, only just in those countries, we estimate that there are about 26 million women that will lose access to family planning or have lost access to family planning, which has resulted in 8 million unintended pregnancies. We also looked at the disruption of services and saw that in many cases, particularly across Africa, we saw up to 25 to 30% reduction in access to vaccinations, to family planning, to antenatal care, to delivery care, etc. So a really, really serious impact. And some of the other speakers have talked about that. And the action is on country level. And so we worked very closely in the GFF partnership, and many of the partners are online today, to support ministries of health to respond to these disruptions and to ensure that we would minimize that negative impact of COVID on the access that women and children have, including ensuring that there are no interruptions in supply for important commodities, including contraception, to have access, particularly in community and primary care level services. Now, if I segue to the question you asked around the financing, there are three areas that I'd like to emphasize. First of all, it is really clear that to mitigate the negative impact that COVID have and to build back better, we do need to increase the funding for essential services and ensure that we work closely with our partner countries to allocate that funding to the services that are most effective for women and children. And we are leveraging and building on the coordination platforms that GFF established in the GFF countries, led by the government, to ensure that there's full representation of the partnership, including the important voice of civil society and private sector, to ensure that in those plans and that financing, SRHR services are very much at the core of the package of essential services. And then we also are planning to bring more funding to the front lines and really ensure that this is women and children and girls centered, the services that are community and primary care based, and that they are of high quality and that they are affordable. And one of the most dramatic impacts we saw of the COVID lockdowns and the job losses and the economic impact was really a very large increase in women saying that they were no longer able to afford accessing services, which is something that needs to be on all of our minds. And so GFF just released its new strategy, and in September of this year, SRHR will continue to be a very big priority for us, and we will double down on gender and ensuring voice for women and children to make sure that whatever happens in terms of the quality and the delivery of those important services, that they reflect the needs and the voice of women in the communities that we serve. And maybe a final point before I hand it back is that it's more clear than ever that this is such a huge agenda and there's not one agency that can do this alone. And so we are really, really proud to work in a broad-based partnership as part, and we thank many of our partners that are here today. We are really ready to work together and ensure that we create opportunities for a better life for women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Monique. My next question is directed to Eunice Garcia, the Executive Director of the Youth Coalition for Sexual and Reproductive Rights Canada. Eunice, you represent a youth-led international organization committed to the rights of young people. What role do young people play when it comes to holding political leaders to account for women's and girls' bodily autonomy and SRHR?
Thank you so much for the invitation and for having us here. I think that us as a youth-led organization, as a representation of the youth in this space, we have two major roles. The first one is, of course, to push for youth-centered and accessible sexual and reproductive health services and policies, but we also are here to push for the recognition of the necessity of bringing youth voices to these spaces. We need to be recognized as subjects with agency and as active social agents driving change. And both are equally indispensable to achieve gender equality and SRHR for girls, adolescents, and young people. We really believe that this multi-stakeholder effort to advance gender equality is a great platform to advance meaningful youth participation and engagement, and to reflect on how are we really addressing that meaningful youth participation. We believe that meaningful participation starts with bringing young people to decision-making processes in all stages, including the design of the methodology of the platform. The design of the space from this methodology is key to young people in how young people are going to be engaging with these platforms. We diversity and for youth-led initiatives. The youth-led organizations that were selected as leaders in the action coalitions, we are very happy to have been granted with this responsibility and the acknowledgement of our work and expertise. However, young people are so diverse that it cannot be expected that 2 or 3 organizations are representative of all the young people in all their diversity. And if we are really trying to build an intersectional agenda, we have to be critical of these spaces, and we need to bring those voices to the table. We as the Youth Coalition have also reflected on what does it mean to be leaders in this action coalition. And yesterday, the UN Women hosted a meeting between all the youth-led organizations selected as the leaders of the different action coalitions. And the Youth Coalition has presented some recommendations to support our leadership during this process. We really believe that we must be allowed to do what we came to do, which is lead the youth movement within the Action Coalition. And some of these recommendations include allowing leaders from youth-led organizations to have our own working groups, a parallel agenda, to receive logistics and technical support to be able to design our own strategy and to bring the voices of all the other youth-led organizations that weren't selected, but that are very interesting in being heard. We also need to engage with all those young people who are doing amazing things out there, who are protesting, who are mobilizing, and who are organizing themselves, and who are building community networks of young people for young people. There are examples around the world of collective groups of young people who are not involved in advocacy at all and who are driving huge social changes. We have the young feminists around the world organizing themselves to provide safe self-managed abortions. And we have young women volunteering as doulas. We have the Maria Verde movement, mainly led by young feminists in Latin America. We have like so many examples of how important is youth participation. But many of these groups have no access to these types of spaces, and it is our responsibility as leaders of these action coalitions to engage with them and to add their seats to the table. And for that, we need the support from the stakeholders who are leading these action coalitions. We really believe that to promote the intergenerational dialogue, we need to eliminate the rhetoric that everyone needs certain credentials to participate in these discussions, because all experiences should be valid. Everyone has the same access to these certifications and credentials. And to accomplish the latter, youth-led organizations must be supported to lead the creation of our own spaces and to shape our own participation. We want to also raise awareness of how important it is to make youth engagement sustainable and not only an ad hoc practice such as this. We must consider youth engagement as a rule from now on. All spaces where decisions are being made should proactively recruit young voices on a regular basis. And this is why we expect that the blueprint should include a plan to engage and support young people and their organizations to continue working and to continue doing what we are doing so far. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eunice, for your commitment and your intervention. I'm pleased to go to our next speaker, Adriana Wex, representative of the Indigenous Children and Youth Commission of the Continental Network of Indigenous Women, Mexico. Adriana, addressing multiple and intersecting forms of discrimination is critical to leaving no one behind. What do you hope to bring to this action coalition in terms of Indigenous women and girls' bodily autonomy and SRHR?
Thanks. Bishabelesh, Hachmalop Akab, Hatskapkin, Yanakti Tulaklesh, Hachtahki Makinwol, Yankenguayeta Huetelesh. Hola, muy buenos días, ¿cómo están? Yo soy Adriana, eso fue en lengua maya. Entonces, estoy muy contenta de estar aquí en este espacio y creo que para contestar esa pregunta es necesario contextualizar primero que el movimiento de mujeres indígenas de América Latina hemos planteado la necesidad de construir mecanismos de participación e inclusión de las mujeres y los pueblos indígenas donde se garanticen los servicios pertinentes y óptimos, en particular para nosotras las juventudes, y que hagan posible encarar los problemas de acceso y de calidad de los servicios de salud integral y reproductiva para disminuir desde un enfoque intercultural la falta de consideración lingüística, el trato discriminatorio, el desconocimiento de los recursos y los valores y de los valores humanos y culturales de las familias indígenas y la carencia de, digamos, la calidad humana de parte del personal de los establecimientos, ¿no? De las instituciones. Entonces, la sexualidad debe ser comprendida desde los pueblos indígenas, debe entenderse de una manera integral, desde lo corporal, desde lo espiritual, y se debe articular el tema de la salud con el cuerpo y la sexualidad, el erotismo, el placer de las mujeres, de los hombres y pues de los pueblos indígenas, ¿no? Entonces, el acompañamiento para el tema de derechos sexuales y reproductivos es el acompañamiento jurídico y psicosocial. Creemos que este acompañamiento jurídico debe ser desde las mismas autoridades indígenas con nuestras normas, y lo psicosocial va desde las madres guiadoras espirituales que nos curan desde el espíritu, ¿no? Desde nuestra cosmovisión, desde adentro, para quitar todas las huellas de violencia que hemos vivido, tanto la violencia estructural y las brechas desiguales. Entonces, nosotras hemos asumido el compromiso para visibilizar a las mujeres, a las juventudes indígenas y exigir el cumplimiento de nuestros derechos a nivel local, a nivel nacional y a nivel internacional, e incidir para que nuestras propuestas se conviertan en políticas públicas. Entonces, asumimos este compromiso, nosotras esperamos descolonizar la sexualidad a partir de estos espacios, de los espacios propios que estamos creando para construir informaciones propias, para poder vivir la sexualidad desde nuestras propias reflexiones y comunidades. Entonces, también esperamos traer como reflexionar cuáles son los espacios en los que nosotras tenemos voz verdadera, cuáles son los espacios construidos desde los pueblos indígenas para que podamos abordar y hablar y reflexionar sobre los temas de sexualidad, de salud sexual y reproductiva, de autonomía del cuerpo y sobre nuestros derechos. Vamos a construir alianzas y compartir la información que entre mujeres indígenas tenemos la oportunidad de informarnos entre otros espacios, es decir, vamos a replicar toda esta información, todo lo que vayamos a aprender y todo lo que se plantee dentro de las coaliciones de acción a nivel local, a nivel regional, nacional, para que todas podamos tener la oportunidad de poder incidir en estos espacios. Entonces, también es necesario que entre nosotras podamos reflexionar y avanzar en cómo enfrentamos este etnocentrismo, para superar que algunas mujeres no indígenas pues, piensan que las mujeres indígenas como que no somos capaces, ¿no? Entonces tenemos que ir más allá para que podamos trabajar en conjunto, para que podamos ser capaces de decidir en estos espacios y dejar estos discursos que hasta son un tanto maternalistas, ¿no? Y tutoriales por parte de las instituciones y por parte de otras personas, ¿no? También estamos incorporando estos temas de salud sexual y reproductiva, los derechos sexuales y reproductivos, la autonomía del cuerpo, dentro de las resoluciones de las asambleas de los pueblos indígenas para que podamos tener fuerza. Entonces, si bien como jóvenes, de alguna manera es un tanto difícil alzar la voz dentro de las asambleas comunitarias, sin embargo lo estamos haciendo y dentro de estas voces estamos implementando, estamos hablando sobre nuestros derechos sexuales y reproductivos. Entonces, por último, me gustaría mencionar que también nosotras como Comisión de Niñez y Juventud estamos creando alianzas, estamos dando también acompañamiento y creando procesos de formación en mujeres indígenas jóvenes con metodologías pues, que son cotidianas y diarias, que se basan en los mismos conocimientos de las mujeres indígenas adultas que tienen toda la experiencia. Y hacemos capacitaciones dinámicas que permitan generar confianza y que estos espacios permitan también transformar las relaciones para que sean relaciones basadas en el respeto y sobre todo que tengan esta parte de interculturalidad. Gracias.
To kick off our final dialogue with strategic partners and civil society, we will play an inspiring clip as a reminder of why we are here today.
It's time to renew our commitments and take decisive action to make gender equality a lived reality in this generation. The time is now, and we must act together.
I am pleased to ask my next question to Agathe Blanc, Project Manager at Alliance Droits et Santé, Côte d'Ivoire. Agathe, the question we have for you is that you work with an organization that is committed to improving rights and health of women in West Africa. What do you think is key to laying the groundwork of a more just and equal future for adolescent girls after COVID-19 and beyond?
Merci. Merci pour ce moment qui nous permet de porter la voix de l'Afrique francophone à travers l'Alliance Droits et Santé. Nous savons toutes et tous que l'adolescence est un moment charnière de la vie, une étape clé où l'adolescent doit pouvoir faire des choix éclairés et libres en matière de santé sexuelle et reproductive. Malheureusement, c'est aussi un âge où on constate une hausse des violences sexuelles, des violences sexistes. Les adolescentes doivent avoir la possibilité et des plateformes pour pouvoir parler de ce moment de vie qu'ils traversent. Et C'est le cas aussi à l'exemple des féministes de l'Afrique de l'Ouest. Dans ce contexte, et bien évidemment, l'un des leviers qui apparaît comme déterminant est l'éducation complète à la sexualité qui permet d'agir sur tous les stéréotypes de genre dès le plus jeune âge et contribuer ainsi à la prévention et à la lutte contre les violences sexuelles et sexistes. Dans ce contexte, l'éducation complète à la sexualité apparaît pour nous comme un levier prioritaire pour un monde plus juste et plus équitable. Et bien entendu, dans ce contexte de la crise, notamment celle de la COVID-19 que nous traversons et pour lequel nous continuons de subir les conséquences, et bien au-delà, en attendant le monde après la COVID-19, nous estimons que les politiques publiques en général et les décisions même qui sont prises doivent être adaptées suivant une stratégie de co-construction avec les associations de femmes, les associations féministes, en s'appuyant sur les approches et revendications de ces mouvements que je viens de citer. L'Alliance Droit et Santé a d'ailleurs fait une enquête pour documenter l'impact de la crise de la COVID-19 sur les femmes et bien entendu sur les adolescentes et les jeunes filles en Afrique francophone. Et nous avons formulé des recommandations que nous serons ravis de partager avec vous. Avec la crise de la COVID-19, les associations de femmes, les associations de jeunes féministes n'ont pas été impliquées dans l'élaboration des réponses. C'est pour cela que les États n'arrivent toujours pas à anticiper sur ce genre de crise que nous traversons actuellement et sur d'autres crises également, afin de répondre aux besoins des femmes et des filles en matière de lutte contre les violences. Donc, nous retenons qu'il faudrait plus impliquer les associations de femmes afin d'avoir un monde plus juste et plus équitable pour ces adolescentes. Merci.
Thank you so much, Agathe. Next question goes to Kate Hampton, who is the Chief Executive Officer at the Children's Investment Fund Foundation based in United Kingdom. Kate, CIF is a large philanthropic organization that focuses on improving children's lives. Why have you chosen to join the Action Coalition on Bodily Autonomy and SRHR?
Hi, and thank you. Well, it's pretty clear that children's well-being and opportunity is often very closely tied to the status of their mothers. So we believe that just empowering women and girls is going to be the best way to support children globally and break the bonds of intergenerational deprivation and structural inequalities. That, and of course, supporting girls and women in and of itself is of course crucial. And coming out of COVID, we think there's a real opportunity for gender transformative recovery, being a real motor for socioeconomic and political change. We think it's one of the most effective ways to accelerate poverty reduction, to improve the resilience of communities, and make significant gains in terms of prosperity. But obviously at the heart of this kind of gender transformative approach, we need to make sure that sexual and reproductive health is a precondition for progress. The opposition is on the march and needs to be called out. It's pretty clear that we've made some progress, but COVID's put into sharp relief how far behind we are in many ways, particularly on voice and participation, equity and non-discrimination, and the ability of girls and women to hold governments and other service providers to account, particularly on sensitive issues like self-managed care and safe abortion care. We've been working at CIF since about 2012 with some of the most innovative and bold partners to try and support women and girls to exercise their rights. And although we're concentrating our work in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, these issues affect women and girls across the world. So we've joined the Generation Equality Action Coalition because we see it as a platform to accelerate change and ratchet up ambition, which is so crucial today. We're hoping to see bold, new, tangible, measurable commitments being made. We expect the forum to set the standard for leadership and buttress trailblazers and challenge and encourage laggards. And we also really want to see it break down siloed approaches through comprehensive policies and programs that really integrate into government systems. So we're keen to work with our partners in the Action Coalition on a number of fronts. First, we want to see SRHR taken comprehensively. So we don't believe this is a menu, we believe it's a comprehensive package, and we want to see gender transformative approaches to family planning, HIV prevention, and safe abortion all prioritized. And we think that comprehensive sexuality education is absolutely crucial to that. And I was, really interested in what we've heard from young feminists today about the need for respect for the lived experience of young women. I think that's absolutely crucial in getting this comprehensive approach. I also think we need to harness the potential of self-care so that women can take control of their reproductive health. And I think the pandemic has shown just how important this is when healthcare systems are under strain, or when there are extreme weather events or other problems. Access to self-managed care is absolutely crucial. And finally, I just wanted to draw attention to when aid budgets are under pressure because of fiscal stress, it's really, really crucial that all countries step up, and we see a dramatic increase in women's commodity supplies over the next decade. And this is going to require all sorts of innovative approaches, but most fundamentally, we need to make sure that women's demands and choices are put at the heart of supply side decisions, and that decisions aren't taken by anyone except the women and girls. Thanks.
Many thanks, Kate, for your leadership and to that of SIF. I now turn to Shannon Kowalski, Director of Advocacy and Policy at the International Women's Health Coalition, IWHC, based in the United States. Shannon, your organization works to advance SRHR of women and girls worldwide. In your view, what do you think success would look like in terms of this action coalition?
Thanks, Eva, and thanks to all of our partners in the leadership of this Action Coalition. We're so excited to partner with you all in this endeavor. I believe we have such an unprecedented opportunity with this Action Coalition to be able to take on the challenges that are too often sidelined, whether it's because of politics or because it doesn't seem to be a priority at the time. So to be successful, that means we need to be bold and courageous in our vision and in the actions that we're taking together to ensure that all people have the ability to fully realize their sexual and reproductive rights. So for the International Women's Health Coalition, the key to success is ensuring that all people have what they need to be able to make and act on decisions about their sexual and reproductive health and to take control of their lives. For us, some of the key priorities are increasing access to abortion, as so many others have said on this webinar. This requires decriminalizing abortion laws, removing health sector barriers, such as those that sanction healthcare providers' ability to refuse to provide services based on their own personal beliefs, or requirements for third-party consent, and expanding the ability of women to manage their own abortions on their own terms safely. Second, we believe that it will be a factor of success if we're able to ensure that all young people everywhere have access to comprehensive sexuality education. And we know that to be successful, this education has to go beyond providing information on sexual and reproductive health and bodies, but also address human rights, gender, power within relationships, as well as critically be linked to sexual and reproductive health services so that adolescents and young people can truly exercise their sexual and reproductive health and rights. And finally, expanding bodily autonomy and sexual rights. So the ability of women, girls, gender non-conforming people, and others to be able to control and make decisions over their bodies and their sexualities and their sexual partners, whether and when to seek healthcare, whether and when to marry. So for us to do this, we not only need to dismantle punitive and discriminatory laws, but we also need to change gender norms around sex and sexuality and give greater power to women and girls to manage their own sexual and reproductive health care, as Kate just discussed. And we also need to focus on women, girls, and people who are marginalized and excluded, so racialized people, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and gender nonconforming people, migrants, people with disabilities, Indigenous people, sex workers, among many, many others. Finally, to be successful, we must place feminist movements at the center of our work, particularly those that are in the global south or that are led by racialized or marginalized groups in the global north. We know from decades of experience that these are the movements that will both drive change we seek and will hold us accountable. They are and will be a critical factor in the success or failure of this Action Coalition, and indeed all of the other Action Coalitions as well. So we're really excited to seize this opportunity to work courageously towards these ends with the leaders and future members of this Action Coalition. We know that this work will not be easy, but we know that it's critical. As so many others have said, without this, gender equality and indeed gender justice will be elusive. So thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. And now I would like to invite Mabel Bianco, President of the Foundation for Studies and Research on Women, based in Argentina. Mabel, this year we celebrate Beijing Plus 25, an important milestone for gender equality. How do you think the Action Coalition could leverage this anniversary? To unmute yourself.
Ahora, ¿me pueden escuchar? You can listen to me now? Okay. Como una antigua luchadora por los derechos sexuales y reproductivos, no vieja, antigua, solamente en mi país, en la región y en el mundo, creo que llegar a estar en esta coalición de acción es poder completar algo de lo que quisimos, algo logramos, pero todavía no todo. Entonces, para nosotros, empezamos por decir que Cairo fue una lucha prioritaria y ahí conseguimos algo que tenemos que resaltar. Logramos que los derechos reproductivos sean la base para tomar decisiones y no las metas demográficas. No fue menor esto, pero no logramos incluir los derechos sexuales ni el acceso al aborto seguro. Fue una relación ahí difícil, pero llegamos. Sin embargo, esto permitió llegar a Beijing con una posibilidad, y ahí tuvimos la gran posibilidad de que se incluyeran los derechos sexuales. Nada menos que los derechos sexuales. No digo la salud sexual, hablo de los derechos. Y por eso el programa de Beijing es fundamental para lograr realmente que las mujeres puedan decidir acerca del ejercicio de su sexualidad y de su derecho a elegir si tener, no, hijos, cuándo, cómo, dónde y por qué. Y esto no es menor. Y por eso creo que el gran desafío de este grupo, de la coalición de acción, es lograr eso, salir de las palabras que ya las tenemos, superar, incluso lograr mejores leyes, pero llegar a cambiar eso. Y por eso, como dijo la ministra de mi país, de Argentina, al comienzo, nosotros traemos desde la Fundación y todo el grupo de las feministas de América Latina y el Caribe este lema de educación sexual para decidir, métodos anticonceptivos para no abortar y aborto seguro para no morir. Esto no es un lema vacío, es un lema que tiene que tener sus raíces en que toda la sociedad tiene que estar trabajando para esto. Por eso para nosotros es tan importante, y esto es algo en lo cual nos hemos comprometido y creemos que es clave, porque si no, no va a haber posibilidades de generación e igualdad si no logramos esto. Pero también señalar que no es menor lograr que se eliminen todas aquellas medidas nocivas o lesivas para mujeres y niñas que todavía existen, como la mutilación genital femenina y el matrimonio o convivencia forzada, porque tenemos que entender que en muchos países lo que prima es la convivencia forzada de las niñas que produce, bueno, el mayor riesgo desde ya de embarazos no previstos o no planificados, no intencionales, la violencia y también la infección con el VIH, y deja a las niñas totalmente desempoderadas en poder de estos varones. Entonces, la igualdad que queremos, y por eso estamos trabajando en este proyecto de Generación Igualdad, va de la mano y no se va a lograr si no tenemos capacidad de elegir libremente qué queremos y cómo ejercer, insisto, nuestra sexualidad y nuestros derechos sexuales y reproductivos. Y esto es lo que queremos con acciones concretas, no más palabras, acciones concretas. Y por eso estamos luchando en esta coalición de acción y es nuestro compromiso. Y también decir que como FEIM, desde hace 20 años tenemos una red de adolescentes y jóvenes por los derechos sexuales y reproductivos que trabajan en nuestro país regionalmente y mundialmente. Entonces, esto no es solamente para los de 18 y más, es también para los de 18 y menos, que son el grupo gran vulnerable. Así que ese es nuestro compromiso y en eso estamos. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Mabel, for your dedication and commitment to this Action Coalition. So we have come to the last part, which is our conclusion. And for our final round, I would like to ask each of our panelists in one word, can you tell us what this partnership means to you? And maybe we could start with Natalia.
Thank you. Am I being heard?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'd like to say that it's been amazing to hear the discussion today. What we have seen is the type of solidarity and resolve and unity that we have in our coalition, and that we are ready to move. We've heard that actions speak louder than words, and that we represent the continuum of a revolution on bodily autonomy that began a quarter of a century ago in Cairo and in Beijing, and continues up to the moment, from Nairobi to next year when we meet in Mexico and in Paris to assert, and we saw that today, that there is a new generation of young women forging forward. Generation equality is forging ahead with renewed vigor, with full diversity, and with an understanding that inclusivity, anti-racist leadership that respects all the diversity that is represented by knowing what needs to happen on the ground. That's the type of leadership that this coalition will embrace. And I would like to assure the young women of the coalition that we will stand with you. I am ready to follow your leadership because I believe that alongside you, this movement to govern one's own body and to make sure that every girl traversing her adolescence into her womanhood understands her worth and the respect that women and girls deserve, that this movement will succeed. So thank you very much to the extraordinary commentators today and the solidarity that we have seen from women, from young women in particular, but also from so many allies that are committed to the fight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Natalia. And Phumzile, would you like to also give us your one word or your overall ideas?
Thank you very much. My one word, which is a combination of words, this partnership means to me intergenerational and inclusive actions. It also means to me that the multi-stakeholder partnership is also a platform for solidarity so that we can support each other and support the women and girls no matter who they are and no matter where they are, so that all of them can have their rights respected and the services they need wherever they are received. I want to applaud all of the speakers today for their enthusiasm, and I thank you so much for all the encouragement that you have demonstrated, that has come with what you have said today. We are indeed encouraged by your commitment. And I also want to compliment the young people for their determination and then assure them that we need their contribution, that the action coalitions are designed in such a way that in each action coalition, young people will contribute and identify an action they want to take in each action coalition. I can't wait to see what they're going to come up with. I am in a hurry, and I think Natalia and the other member states and partners who are here are also waiting to see your dynamic leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Phumzile. And maybe we can do a very quick round of one word of what this partnership means from our other speakers. Minister Gomez Alcorta. What is your one word?
Sí, ahí se escucha. Bueno, no, solamente decir que este encuentro ha sido sumamente nutritivo, enriquecedor y sobre todo demostrativo de la necesidad del trabajo internacional, de tener una agenda feminista internacional, porque a pesar de las diferencias locales que podemos ver, vemos que las violencias y las desigualdades claramente son estructurales y por ende, como dije antes, no tienen frontera. Por eso, aplaudir la iniciativa, seguir trabajando. Sabemos que en el marco de la pandemia esas desigualdades y esas violencias se han agudizado, por lo tanto también tenemos que reforzar las estrategias colectivas como esta, y tenemos un trabajo muy grande por delante. Así que solamente eso.
And Trina had to leave early, but her reply is solidarity, that this partnership shows us that despite a global health crisis and despite conservative forces pushing back on basic rights, we're still united and committed to the rights of all women and girls across the world. Minister Moreno, your one word of what this partnership is.
Thank you very much, Siva. And thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for your inspiring messages. Alors, mon mot, c'est le mot ambition, parce que il est temps que nous passions des bonnes intentions aux actions concrètes. Nous devons ensemble, individuellement et collectivement, être ambitieux à la fois sur le fond et dans les moyens mobilisés pour créer un monde de demain qui soit plus juste, plus inclusif et plus égalitaire. Nous l'avons entendu sur toutes les interventions cet après-midi. Et je crois que c'est la meilleure leçon que nous puissions retirer de cette double crise sanitaire et économique. Et j'aimerais répéter ce que le docteur Phumzile a dit. C'est un travail intergénérationnel que nous devons mener parce que nous, les personnes expérimentées, nous avons beaucoup à apprendre de notre jeunesse et j'espère que notre expérience aussi peut servir à cette jeunesse pour que nous avancions ensemble de manière très ambitieuse. Merci à tous et au plaisir de vous accueillir à Paris au mois de juin 2021. Ce sera une grande joie avec le Mexique et UN Women de vous accueillir dans notre belle ville parisienne.
Thank you. And Elena, what is your one word?
Thank you. I would like to say that we see this partnership with the It's an opportunity to build a common platform for exchanging good practices, and of course to find the new ways and models for dealing with the challenges, especially together with the younger women and young girls, as a previous speaker said, new generations for leaderships for the better future. Thank you very much.
Alvaro, your one word on what this partnership means?
I hope the partnership finds in it the intimacy, the pleasure, and the action that we're looking for out there.
Thank you. And Monique, your one word of what this partnership means?
I'll make it one sentence: collective leadership for impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Monique. Eunice, your one word for what this partnership means?
I think for us it's meaningful representation and participation of young people.
Thank you, Eunice. Adriana, your one word.
Juventudes diversas y resistentes.
That's right. Thank you. And Agathe, your one word.
Ce partenariat représente pour nous un travail de construction commune entre féministes de diverses générations pour accélérer le changement avec pour levier l'éducation complète à la sexualité.
Thank you, Agathe. And Kate, your one word of what this partnership means.
We're a horribly ill-disciplined bunch, aren't we? I think the gracious with us. My one word is accountability, and because everybody cheated, I'm going to put in brackets comprehensive and mutual, if that's okay.
Thank you, Kate. And Shannon, your one word of what this partnership means.
I'll be good. My one word is justice.
Yes. And Mabel, your one word of what this partnership means to you.
Acciones concretas para que todas las mujeres y niñas puedan elegir libremente acerca de su sexualidad, su reproducción, incluido el derecho al aborto seguro, y además eliminar las acciones dañinas. Solo así tendremos igualdad y en serio, no en papeles. Gracias.
Thank you, Mabel. Thank you all so much. We might be undisciplined, but definitely we are 100% passionate, and we're definitely 100% committed to being on this journey with each other. So for all of them who have joined for next steps, I would like to turn your attention to this timeline on the Generation Equality Forum and the Action Coalitions. As you can see from the slides, during July to December, the co-leads are gathering to shape actions and blueprints for each coalition. In December, the membership model will be open, enabling interested stakeholders to join the Action Coalition. So please note this. In December, the membership model will be open to enable interested stakeholders to join the Action Coalitions. Throughout December to March, the public will continue to be engaged as well as the leaders. The Mexico City Forum will be convened in March, where blueprints will be refined and the members of the coalitions will be announced. And finally, we culminate to the launch of all the Action Coalitions in Paris in June 2021. On this next slide, you can see where you can find out more. You can direct your questions and continue to watch the space for more to come, right? So thank you all again for joining us today. Today's session was a powerful reminder of how we as a community have seen many setbacks over these many years. Yet we have always been able to come back, to show up and to keep up the fight for equality. So we will persevere, we will emerge stronger, and we will succeed because we are all together on this journey, on this one platform, to push the boundaries of what is possible for all women, all young people, and girls everywhere. Stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
All the best.
Au
Bye.
revoir.
Bye. Au revoir. Ciao.
Au revoir.